And finally, but not least, our cleanup hitter for the panel, Secretary DiBerardinis. He's been leading an effort on carbon management here in the state of Pennsylvania that is about to go public with some documents over the next, I would say, a couple of weeks. I see Representative Vitale. It's nice to see you were able to join us today, and we certainly like House Bill 110, which would do much of what we talked about in the roadmap. So thank you very much for introducing that legislation. Secretary DiBerardinis has certainly been a leader on these issues, and we appreciate his willingness to step the administration out to see what we can do to prepare Pennsylvania as these new policies come at the state and federal level. Secretary DiBerardinis.
Thanks, Brian. Still good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you today. And before I start my remarks, I want to commend Brian and Peck and his board of directors and his supporters for putting together this event. I think these are important discussions, important places for dialogue and communication of really cutting-edge information. This is the second one of these events, the types of people that I participated in one about 2 months ago in Philadelphia, and it continues to add, I think, to the fabulous body of work that Peck does all over the state. And we're happy to be working with Brian, his staff, and his board of directors on those efforts. What I wanted to try to do here today is, by the way, Brian talked about everybody having this sort of, I think these three guys do have some national impact and renown. I think my national impact is renown, and renown is calling up my brothers in Montana and bragging about all the good work we're doing here in Pennsylvania. So I think at least 2 people in Montana know what we're doing here in Pennsylvania as DCNR. I also want to, before I start here, just commend John Quigley, who was on DCNR staff, and it's really, yeah, people know that what I'm going to be talking about is his work. So, and he might help me if there's any time for Q&As. Also want to mention another important person on our staff, and a lot of you know her, Cindy Dunn, who is the Bureau Director for Conservation and Recreation, and is really involved in the land side of this work. What I want to do is sort of talk a little bit about, contextualize some of the things that you've heard relative to what's happened here in Harrisburg over the last 4 or 5 years. Then talk about how that is, how we're trying to take that in DCNR and mold that into our mission, and then give you some of the particulars of the work that we've done with the Carbon Management Advisory Group over the last 2 years. I'm not a scientist, nor am I a lifelong conservationist. Just that's who I am. So but I do think I'm a pretty good public administrator, and that's sort of what my strength is. But so when I come to Harrisburg and look over the last 5 years with a little different eye, I think, than some others, I've seen an evolution of the thinking where data and research and our understanding of global climate change as an immense threat and a crisis has shaped public policy. And I want to talk about that for a minute. We started out, I think, with these Keystone Principles, and Joanne Denworth is here. The Keystone Principles were one of the early features of this administration trying to think about sustainability and how to work grant programs in this administration build sustainable communities and sustainable economies. Roughly at the same time, we were moving Growing Greener 2, which was an immense achievement by the governor and the legislature, and our 2 legislators here today were incredible supporters of that effort, and they should take some of the credit for that as well. And that was a bond issue that pushed sustainable economic growth, that pushed, really enabled us to protect more land and advanced recycling all over the state. And Peck was a wonderful supporter of that program as well. We had the alternative energy standards that were set again with the governor and the legislature, again moving the ball forward. We also began work as an administration, again in the legislature, on advancing alternative energy, particularly wind power as a carbon-free source of energy. And now, which is currently up in the air, is, and still a question, is the governor's energy independence program. But what you see here, I think, is a growing body of work, a growing understanding of the terrible impact of global climate change. And you've seen the stuff in front of you today. I'm not the scientific part of this, but you've seen the legal and scientific part of this put before you today. This is our understanding of this issue and the crisis proportions of it and the escalating response of government to that is, I think, a pretty interesting and important part of understanding policy and politics here in Harrisburg. We hopefully will move, and I believe that once the energy independence program is adopted, and hopefully it will be adopted sometime this fall, we will then move as an administration towards a comprehensive climate change strategy and program that is not a set of individual programs to respond to the data and the research that was put before you today, but a comprehensive program that will really put forward ambitious goals around carbon reduction and a set of not prospective 20-year and 30-year policy programs and legislation, but things that you can see in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. So we're going to hopefully put forward something that has a reality to it. I think some other states have put forward really ambitious long-term goals, but we're kind of weak on the immediate lift. We want to be strong on the immediate lift and build off of the 5 or 6 or 7 years of strong policy and legislation that's come out in Harrisburg. And I think when you look at, and what Tom has talked about is Pennsylvania as a leader. I mean, my God, Pennsylvania as a leader on climate change and carbon control and good policy around sustainability. That's a big leap for us in the state, and I think it's something we all ought to be proud of. But I think it is connected to that context that I tried to put forward here today, put forward as the kind of current political and policy context of the work. And then to step it up and have a comprehensive program that does reach out 20 years or 30 years, but has real lift in the moment. And the context has been set for that real lift in the moment. And I do believe that within the next 6 months or so, we will have, the government will announce a comprehensive climate change program for the state of Pennsylvania. Well, what does that mean for DCNR? How does DCNR, how does the land guys fit into this? How does the conservation agency in the state fit into that context, current context, and future climate change strategy? Well, what I tried to bring to DCNR since my appointment has been trying to understand the history of the organization, trying to understand its legacy as of its Bureau of Parks and Forestry, and sort of put that in the sort of current context, currency, as it were, in the moment, in this time in Pennsylvania. And I think what I've tried to do is we've faced the land. We've been looking at the land and the forest for 100 years. And I think that's very appropriate and is our historic mission. We are, in fact, the best land managers in the country. I say that without reservation. That our parks and forests are the best managed public lands in America, if not in the top, number one, we're in the top 3. And we do have sustainable certification of our forest practices, which only 3 states in the country have that sustainable certification. We are one of 3 states. So we manage our ecosystems in a sustainable way. And that is something I'm very proud of, and the Bureau of Forestry is also very proud of. But we have to turn from the forest and turn towards people. We have to turn towards communities. We have to turn towards institutions. We have to turn towards economies to really increase the value of conservation. We have to elevate and expand the values of conservation to compete in the world that we're in today. If we think we are going to just get by on the ecological value and the environmental value of what we do, we will fail in our mission of conservation. We will fail. We have to understand our economic value and our social value. And if we can elevate those values within the work of land conservation and in the work of environmental stewardship and natural resource conservation, then we will succeed and we will have a major role in a carbon-constrained world. So that's kind of the context for DCNR. That's where we're trying to bring our organization forward to that spot, to where we take what we know to where people live, right? That we look at rivers and streams that have been closed up and dirtied up for 100 years and clean them up and open them up, of course for their environmental and ecological values, but for their economic values and their social values as well. We think that's the road we're on, and when you put that in the context of climate change, we have a significant role to play there as well. 2 years ago, or more than 2 years ago, we established a Carbon Management Advisory Group to try to figure out what is the role of DCNR and what is the role of land in a carbon-constrained future, which again, you heard about, Bob talked a lot about. It's an inevitability of carbon-constrained future. We did this in a collaborative way. It wasn't just DCNR or our bureaus thinking about this. We wanted to open this up. We partnered up with PEC early. We worked with Tom in the Center for Climate Change Strategies. We brought in the utilities, major utilities in Pennsylvania. We brought in our sister agencies, DEP, Ag, the Game Commission, the U.S. Forest Service. We engaged leading universities. We worked with the nonprofit organizations and brought in the forest industry as well. So we, again, no one organization or no one state agency has the knowledge and the oomph to get this done. So we try to do our work collaboratively across the board, but we formed this advisory group to help us think about how do we look out a few years and how do we integrate the data and the knowledge that we have now and project into the future of a role for DCNR and land in a carbon-constrained America and world. The first thing that we try to do is understanding the coming rules around carbon and carbon-constrained America. We wanted to figure out, can Pennsylvania significantly store carbon underground? Which is, I'll talk a little bit about that later. And we wanted to identify the rules and policies that will incentivize and enable forest landowners, forest product manufacturers, owners of geologic resources to participate in and benefit from a comprehensive climate change strategy for Pennsylvania. So how did that shake down in the particular? Carbon, geologic sequestration, and quite frankly, that's, and here's what it is, it's not that complicated. The big unanswered question is coal-fired power plants. I mean, you look at China, they're putting up 2 coal-fired power plants per week. Is that right, 2 a week? Or maybe it was a month. 2 a week. It's incredible. I think we have 78 in Pennsylvania, but we have 70-some coal-fired power plants in our state. I mean, the big carbon producer is coal-fired power plants. So geologic sequestration The idea of that is capturing the carbon before it's from coal-fired plants, before it's emitted in the atmosphere, capturing it and then piping it and storing it underground. Pennsylvania we have a geologic service in our department, and Pennsylvania has the capability of storing several hundred years worth of carbon emissions underground. Now, the big question is can the science be mounted to kind of create a system to capture that carbon? Can the economic demands be met, and can it be done safely? I mean, they're the big questions. But MIT is spending a lot of time on this. The Pew Center for Climate Change is spending a lot of time on this. The EU, European Union, is spending a lot of time on trying to understand this technology. We are one of the most advanced states in the country in trying to understand the potential, the challenges, and the opportunities, the economic opportunities that exist in this model. This is not, I don't think this is the end-all, be-all. This is a bridge. I think this is a bridge that gets us to a more efficient and more carbon-constrained world, but certainly isn't the answer, the long-term answer to carbon emissions. But it is a very important one, and we are leading the work in that, not only in Pennsylvania, but around the country. The second area that we're looking at is terrestrial sequestration, which is trees taking carbon dioxide out of the air. How do we create value in that, particularly when you get to carbon trading and a carbon registry? What is the economic value? How can we support private landowners to sustainably manage their lands? How do we get urban and metropolitan areas to plant more trees and support that? There's a whole range of values, economic and social values, as well as the ecological environmental values in terrestrial sequestration. What's the role of land preservation? I mean, can we add another value to the good work that DCNR has done historically in conservation and conservancies around the state? So how do we position those values in a carbon-constrained world that has a carbon registry and where there's carbon trading? And finally, biomass energy, which is really using low-grade wood, not the hardwoods, but pulp and forest refuse, to provide fuel for electricity, thermals, and liquid fuels. It's an burgeoning field that could, again, create greater social and economic value within our conservation mission. There's some very serious questions around sustainability that we're looking at. So we're sort of moving these three areas forward. We think they have great potential. We are reasonably sure that they will be a significant feature in the governor's climate change agenda in the future. We expect within the next month, this carbon management plan will be ready to be posted on our website in the fall, with a final adoption by the end of the year. We think our work will have a significant impact in Pennsylvania, will have some significant impact on the federal level. I think the states are leading the way here. I think our speakers touched on that rather strongly. In closing, I want to say that I really believe that the next 5 or 10 years, based on this crisis of climate change, where conservation and environmental integrity will be top flight, number in the top tier of public policy questions in America. And I think Pennsylvania, through the work again of our governor, of our legislature, and of groups like PAC, are going to be well positioned not only to be a leading voice in that movement forward, but also to reap the environmental